You've probably met this kind of person before. They notice the moment something feels off in a conversation, even when no one has said a word about it. They can predict how a relationship will end after just a few early encounters. They spot the flaw in a plan before it happens, and more often than not, they're right. But there's something strange about these people. The better they get at recognizing hidden patterns in human behavior, the more they tend to withdraw from the very people they're reading. This isn't a coincidence, and the reason behind it isn't easy to sit with. Before we go further, if this is already reminding you of someone or of yourself, take a second to subscribe to Labyrinth Psychology. This is where we explore the psychology quietly shaping who we become. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. I knew a woman named Ellen who worked as an HR manager at a mid-sized company for 20 years. Ellen had an ability coworkers used to jokingly call a sixth sense. She was always the first to notice when an employee was about to quit, when a meeting was about to turn tense, or when a promise made at work was never going to be kept. But over time, Ellen started showing up less and less to after-work gatherings. She turned down dinner invitations with colleagues, avoided small talk, and eventually, people just stopped inviting her. Not because they disliked her. It was because they could sense she always kept a certain distance, as if she were watching from the outside, rather than actually being part of the room. When asked why she'd become less social over the years, Ellen just said she felt tired. But that wasn't the whole truth. High pattern recognition ability in a lot of Gen Xers didn't appear out of nowhere as some kind of gift. It was often built during years of having to watch closely just to get by. A father with an unpredictable temper that a child had to learn to read before he even walked into the room. A family whose financial instability forced a kid to anticipate the next crisis before it hit. Or simply a childhood where nothing was ever explained clearly, forcing a child to piece everything together from the smallest signals. In psychology, this connects to something called hypervigilance, a state where the nervous system learns to continuously scan the environment for signs of danger, even in situations that are completely safe. It's a survival mechanism, not a harmless natural talent. And here's the dark part of the story. A brain trained to detect dangerous patterns can't simply switch that ability off just because the current situation is safe. It keeps scanning, keeps analyzing, keeps picking up on the smallest signs of insincerity, inconsistency, or hidden motive in other people's behavior, even when that person is completely harmless. And once you're constantly noticing small cracks in what someone says, contradictions in what they do, or a hidden motive behind an otherwise ordinary invitation, connecting with people becomes far more exhausting than it is for someone without that ability. Withdrawing for them isn't a social choice. It's a form of self-protection against a stream of information they can't seem to stop receiving. I knew someone named Walt who worked in financial auditing for over 30 years. Walt was well known at his firm for catching accounting fraud that no one else could spot, just by looking at numbers that seemed completely ordinary to everyone else. But at home, Walt rarely joined extended family conversations, avoided big gatherings, and often left the room the moment a conversation drifted into territory that felt, to him, not genuine. His wife once asked why he always seemed distant at family get-togethers. Walt told her he wasn't being distant. He was simply hearing far more than what was actually being said out loud, and that wore him out far faster than ordinary conversation ever would. He said there were times he wished he could just turn that ability off, if only to sit in a room and believe things were exactly as they appeared. Here's the important thing to understand. This kind of isolation isn't a sign of coldness or contempt for other people. It's a direct consequence of living too long in a state of having to decode the environment just to survive it. The paradox is this: the very ability that once helped them survive unstable periods of their lives has now become the same thing, making it harder for them to trust, to relax, and to allow themselves a simple, unanalyzed connection with the people around them. This isn't some unbreakable curse, but it also isn't something that gets solved just by trying to be more open. It requires learning to tell the difference between a genuine warning sign and a signal that's simply normal human variation, a distinction a hypervigilant brain is rarely ever taught how to make. If you recognize yourself in this, you've probably been called hard to get close to, overly critical, or too sensitive to small details. But maybe what's actually happening is that you learned to observe too closely, too early, to the point where simply trusting someone without analyzing them has become almost impossible. That doesn't mean something is broken in you. It means part of you is still doing a job it was trained to do a long time ago. A job that, in most of your current situations, isn't actually necessary anymore. High pattern recognition isn't purely a gift, and it isn't purely a curse either. It's the mark of a brain that once had to survive through observation, now facing a new lesson to learn, knowing when to turn that vigilance off, so it can allow itself to connect instead of just watching from a distance. If this video touched on something familiar to you, share your own story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Labyrinth Psychology as we continue uncovering the quiet truths that have shaped who we are.